Hey everyone, Peter Finch here, and today we are going to be looking at one of the most frustrating things in the game of golf, thinning and fatting your wedges. So if you're around the green and you're struggling with that shot, hopefully today we can alleviate those problems. By the end of this lesson, you will understand what causes these mishits, have some drills that you can go away and work on, which will translate onto the golf course and hopefully help eliminate these shots for good. Okay, let's get going. First, let's have a look at why these frustrating shots happen. And in today's session, we're going to be focusing on this area around the green. Firstly, the heavy shot, the fat shot, the chunk. This happens when the club enters the ground before the golf ball and when the leading edge starts to dig into the ground. Now this can be caused by a poor ball position, it can be by angle of attack. There are a number of reasons why this will happen, which we will get into. However, it is mostly about the leading edge and controlling the bottom of the club throughout impact, and we will show you how to do that. Now, thinning a chip shot happens when the leading edge hits the equator of the golf ball and the ball scuttles across the green without any control. Often, the issues that lead people to fat the ball will also lead them to thin the ball. However, there are different factors about leaning back through impact and about the structure of the arms breaking down a little bit too early. So how are we going to start to fix these issues? Well, the first drill that we're going to use is a feet together drill, which is it's pretty self-explanatory, really. Find yourself a short chip shot and place the feet bang next to each other. What this allows a golfer to do is understand where their weight distribution is at setup and throughout the swing. If you move too far over to the left-hand side, you will topple over, and the same to the right if you're a right-handed golfer. Place the ball off the back toe and try and just lean into the lead side just a small amount. And what we want to be doing here is trying to focus on hitting the ball first and then clipping the turf. I really don't need to hit another demonstration shot, but that was so crispy. Oh my God, I love new wedges. Top tip of the video. Treat yourself and get new wedges. This drill and this setup, which you can use on the golf course, is a very quick way to understand low point and where the club is bottoming out in its swing arc. Swing arc is how the club moves on an arc through the point of impact. Now, mostly what happens when you fat and thin shots is that arc bottoms out prior to impact, so prior to hitting the ball. It can hit the surface, so you hit it fat, or it can miss the ground completely and hit close to the equator of the golf ball. Pretty much universally, if you can get swing arc bottoming out after the golf ball, you are going to come up with cleaner strikes. Sometimes you can get the club bottoming out at impact and using the bounce of the club to glide along the surface. With the feet together drill, you can experiment around with weight distribution because it's only really at setup that you're going to be able to set where your weight is. If you move through the impact area and you start to go towards the target, you will unbalance very quickly. So it's about getting the weight set and then keeping it there throughout the swing. If you keep it more towards the front foot, the club should bottom out after the ball. Now, often players who struggle with fat and thin shots are not using the sole of the club effectively. On that last drill, as we were moving weight onto the lead side, that especially makes players nervous who tend to fat the ball. So what we want to try and encourage is more of a collection of the ball at impact rather than a dig down into the surface. Now, to best accomplish that, we want to be using the bounce angle on the bottom of a wedge. So bounce angle is the difference between the leading edge and the bottom of the sole. If you can use this angle effectively through impact, the club will not dig into the surface. It will have more of a gliding motion as the bottom of the sole interacts with the turf and stops the leading edge from digging in. Now let's have a look at how you can use the bottom of the club more effectively. So first of all, what are we going to be doing with our feet? Now, unlike the drill that we've just seen, I don't like the feet to be really close together, but I don't want them to be too far apart. Just a slight separation at address is absolutely fine, as that allows you to control your ball position. Now, ball position, really simply, the further back the ball goes, the steeper the angle of attack will most likely be, and the further forward it goes, the more shallow that it might become. And you can also assume that the further back a ball goes, that the lower the initial flight is going to be. So for a shot where you have a little slope in front, that's kind of pointless. And if you put the ball a little bit further forward in the stance, you can assume that the ball will take off a little bit higher. For most chips and short pitches, you can get away with the ball position being just back of center. Weight distribution, we want to be seeing it about 60% towards the lead foot. I don't want it getting too far over, as again, that will cause angle of attack to get steeper into impact. So ball position just back of center and about 60% of weight on that lead side. Shaft lean, let's just get the handle matching the lead thigh. If it gets beyond that, that can shove the hands ahead massively at impact. Again, not something that we really want to see. And from this setup, we can focus on using the body to turn the club back and through and trying to keep the club a little bit more shallow and collecting the ball through the point of impact. God, I love new wedges. Oh, absolutely beautiful. So coming through the point of impact with that setup, I want to try and encourage a slightly downward angle of attack onto the ball. And this is something that you see with all the very best players in the world, but I don't want to see a dig of the club into the surface. For a lot of golfers, this will feel like you're collecting the ball through impact rather than digging down into the turf. So we've already spoken about the setup that we're going to use, but what I want you to focus on as you come through impact is, rather than pushing those hands miles ahead and hitting down, I want you to have the feeling that the arc of the club is more shallow rather than steep, and that you're collecting the ball through the point of impact. If you have a setup where your weight distribution is a little bit more favoring the front foot and your hands are level with the thigh, your angle of attack will most likely be slightly down, which should help ensure that slightly downward angle of attack, but not make it steep enough to dig into the ground. Now, the reason that I'm talking about digging into the ground as such a problem for most amateurs is because of the fat and the thin shots. What a lot of players do, if they're approaching impact and they know that the club is steep and that they're going to dig, they will either break down the structure of the arms to try and get the club a little bit more neutral, or start to lean back through the point of impact. That is why having your angle of attack under control is so important. So with that impact there, it was ball first and then just a slight tiny bit of turf afterwards. That's absolutely fine. Technically, if you want to have a shallower arc through the point of impact, a great player to think about, to visualize, is Jason Day, who uses his bigger muscles through chipping and pitching probably better than any other pro. He will get set up, he will get the structure of his arms locked in, and then he'll turn the club away using the big muscles with very little wrist hinge in the backswing or the follow through. Something else which does help a lot of golfers is not to try and stay down on the golf ball. If you think about Luke Donald as an example, but pretty much every top professional, you will see this within their action, is that they don't stay down through the ball, they actively pivot the body upwards through the point of impact. It really does lay to rest the idea that you have to keep your head down. So that same setup, I'm going to use the bigger muscles to drive the action, and I'm going to pivot up through the point of impact. Oh, do it, do it, do it, do it. Ah. A nice way to activate this bounce angle a little bit more is to actually open up the club face at address. Now, if you open up the club face at address, it will point a little bit more out to the right-hand side, and it will add a little bit of loft. But it is a very nice way to try and use that bounce angle a little bit more. With these short shots, it's crucial that we maintain our speed through the technique. Now, this doesn't mean that we have to swing fast. It doesn't mean that we have to swing hard. All it means is that we have to keep a nice smooth rhythm through the technique. For a lot of people, it's this type of shot that they find very difficult. Now, I'm hitting onto a slight downslope and the pin isn't far away, but there is a slope here in front of me that I want to chip it over. If you're feeling really nervous over this type of shot, you could use a hybrid club or a putter or even a fairway wood to get the ball running. And that is something that I recommend a lot of people try. But to maintain the speed on this type of shot, it's pretty much bringing together a lot of the things that we've just spoken about. So we want to get the setup bang on. There's a little ridge, so I want the ball a little bit higher. So I'm going to play the ball pretty much in the middle of my stance rather than towards the back. I want to try and use the bounce, so I'm going to focus on having the bigger muscles shift the club back and through. I'm going to open up the club face very slightly just to activate a little bit more of that bounce, and I'm going to be pivoting up towards the target. Because I've got all these things set, I can be more confident. I can actually keep my momentum up through the swing and not second guess myself. So I'm just going to pick my landing point just on the green, just keep up that speed back and through, pivoting up, just letting it dribble down towards the pin. Damn. Literally stopping the ball dead. I just can't get it to the hole. The wedges just too spinny. Now, if you are struggling with speed through the point of impact, there's a great drill that you can use, and it's a nice one again to practice and to visualize on these short shots. It's just called a bounce brush drill or a thud drill. It doesn't really matter what it's called. Here's how you do it. So you get yourself set up, but don't use a golf ball. This is all about turf interaction. So get yourself set up, focus and pretend like you are going to hit the shot. And then as you come through impact, we want to try and get the bottom of the club gliding along the grass. We want to be hitting the turf, but we don't want the leading edge digging in. We want to be getting that sound, that thud, as the bottom of the club hits the turf. After you get comfortable with that, we're going to move a ball in, and we're just trying to get the same feeling. We've already spoken about the bounce angle on the bottom of the club, but what does that mean for you? Now, I would always recommend, if at all possible, getting a wedge fitting. I went through one only a few weeks ago, and it was absolutely awesome. Generally speaking, from the amount of golfers that I've seen in lessons and that I've seen hit wedges, I would always err on getting a higher bounce number than a lower bounce number, as that will give the most help through impact. If you have a low bounce on your wedge, that means there's less of a difference between the leading edge and the bottom of the sole. This is helpful if you're playing on a really tight golf course and a really firm golf course, like a links, for example. The most important thing is that you find a bounce which will allow the wedge to work for you, rather than you trying to manipulate it too much. Now, the last drill that we can use to get that feeling of allowing the club to work through impact is a one-arm swing. Now, to get the feeling of the release, take the club in your trail hand. So for a right-hander, that is the right hand. Take the left and just place it on the bicep of the right arm. This will give you a feeling of connection whilst allowing the right hand to still work. And what we want the feeling of is a wide takeaway using the body, and then we want to allow the club to release underneath the golf ball. If you take the club back and then the right arm escapes the left hand, the body won't have rotated. If you move through and the right hand overtakes the left, then obviously we've just flipped the hand through. This is about moving back, letting the club glide under, and then pivoting through impact. Now, this is always a fun one to do as a demonstration shot. Allow that club to move underneath. You know what, that's actually not bad. God, I spun that more than usual. Just using that bounce, letting it glide under the ball. If I hold this one, it's ice cream for everyone. And then once you feel comfortable with that type of action, return to two hands and just try and get the same feeling of the club releasing under the ball. Oh, it's absolutely nipped. Oh. So you can incorporate all those drills into a complete practice session for your short game. And try and follow this video in order. So setup is always going to be the most important thing, because you can put so many aspects in the right order before you even start swinging the club. So guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you get down into those comments below and let us know the types of coaching videos that you want to see us make. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Now, to continue with your swing quest, check out these videos here.